I can't. Good evening. Tonight, you're joined. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Advocacy. We have Crystal on and me tonight. We're missing Bunny, but we just wanted to talk to you about nurturing the strengths and talents of our special needs community. I think this is very important because so many people kind of discredit a lot of things that our special needs community, what they're capable of doing. And I, for one, was one of them. I didn't discount Morgan, but I wasn't totally aware of what her strengths were until I got to know Morgan. Just like I got to know Jeremy, I had to get to know Morgan in a different way. But Morgan taught me a lot, not just as a mom, but she taught me what she could and could not do. So some of the things that she was able to do, it blew my mind. So now I hold her accountable in every way possible because I know what she's capable of. So we just wanted to talk to you tonight about that because I think a lot of people don't really understand how much our special needs community can do and how they strive in so many ways. Um, Crystal, you could jump in at any time, but one of the things that I will say, um, since Morgan was born, when Morgan was born, Morgan had the whole workup of all of the medical team, like the cardiologist, the urologist. They kind of went over her entire body, her neurologist, and one thing that Morgan, for those that don't know, she has a rare genetic condition. One of the more common genetic conditions is Down syndrome. So Morgan has a rare genetic condition. It's so rare that they don't know what to expect. But one thing that they did tell me was, she will experience developmental delays, which she has, but it did not mean that she would not accomplish things. So, one of the things that I would say that they told me early on is they didn't know if she would ever crawl, they didn't know if she would ever walk. One day out of the blue, I was just sitting on the floor. And again, this was an opportunity for Morgan to show me who she was. Out of the blue, she just crawled across the floor. And I mean, just no warning. She just crawled across the floor. And once she did that, I mean, she couldn't be stopped. Same thing with walking. One day out of the blue, she walked. They didn't know if she would ever walk. I didn't know whether she would ever walk, or I mean do some of the things that she did, but I thank God that one day she just showed me what she was capable of doing. It's like as Morgan grew, she began to teach herself different things. And I don't know if it was because she had an older brother or she was around her cousins and or she was going to the daycares and she was modeling herself after other people. But I do know that sometimes it just requires that person to just have a strong will.
Yeah, I think so. I think, I will say with my oldest daughter, as a baby, and she did suffer seizures during childbirth, and she was hospitalized for a few weeks and all. And I remember my husband was in the military, and he took her to see a specialist at another military base. And that particular doctor just kind of let my husband know that this child was going to have some developmental delays, and that this child probably, same as what you were saying, would not walk, and that she would need a lot of disciplinary, a lot of discipline. And I was like, really? Wow. Like he could tell all of that, she's just, not even, a month old. And so, because he saw a lot of challenges down the road per his observation, my husband had orders at the time, and they were deleted in the sense of like he did not have to fulfill those orders. His presence was needed in the home per the doctor. Now that did work out in my favor that he was there, but as I saw my child develop, like you said, when people try to tell you certain things, it'll stick in your mind. And I think you can start ruling out what they can do versus because of what you've been given. I think one of the things that helped me realize with her was I was a school teacher at the time, and she stayed at a home daycare across the street. And the lady who took care of her would always tell me, Crystal, she's so smart. She's so intelligent. She understands very well. If I say, hey, crawl back over there, don't go off the blanket, she would do that. And I was like, now what 5 or 6 month old really listens like that? I didn't believe her until I would come and see. And she used to just tell me some things. And so I would come home and be like, David, she understands really, really well. In a sense, that kind of worked against her, because then you kind of think if your kid can understand this, they should understand that and the other. And that's how David kind of took it sometimes. And I used to be like, no, you can't. You know how some people say, well, if you could do all that, you could use the potty, you could do this, you could do, and that's not the case, So I was very patient with her. And I think those were beginning signs of me recognizing what she's capable of doing, and not just listening to what a doctor, had came up with of what she can or can't do. So I really agree with you, Paul. It's important about observing our children and just seeing what strengths they have, and recognizing their challenges, but not counting them all the way out on those challenges. Delays to me are that a delay. She walked later, she did crawl. She was a mean crawler, but she learned to walk about 16 months. And even to me, that didn't necessarily seem abnormal.
No, it doesn't.
Because she got where she wanted to go. So that wasn't an issue. I think my issue was, girl, you keep crawling, you're going to have them dark knees. Like, that's the only thing I thought. I was like, protect her knees at all costs. But I think as she began to grow, I did not take it as sensory issues. But I thought that she was a very neat girl and didn't like messy. So I used to be like, Ma, she is such a pristine little girl, like girly. But no, certain textures didn't feel right to her. And I didn't recognize that earlier. And then, as you're saying, just certain challenges or just highlighting their strengths. I will say, of all my kids, she is the kid that is a true penny pincher. She loves to save her money. She likes to see it add up. She likes to see commas. She in the bank. I'm like, you want to do this, Jael? She was like, She was like, it's going to take too much of my money. I said, girl, money, everybody got to pay money now.
That's right.
But she's very strategic with how she want to spend her money. And I think that those are just very good pluses. And, with me having, she's being the oldest of 5, I also see her being an example to them. And also that she's not quite, like, they get to look up to her in that instance too. Like, she's just not going, if you're going out to eat, like, driving around, hey, let's stop at Wendy's. She's like, I'll go home and make a sandwich. She's not spending her money on Wendy's. Now, if you treating, she'll spend her money. But if it's her, she's not spending her money on Wendy's. You're muted.
Those are things that you find yourself just kind of discounting. And that's why I say that's so important. Even, when you think about some of our, neurotypical, I know Jeremy is terrible with money. He probably getting me right now.
But I'm about to say, not you calling him out.
Yes, he's getting better. He's getting better. But when it came to spending money and stuff, that was not something he was conscious of. I know one thing that Morgan, and she taught me this. She has had iPads, and Morgan is a matching. I mean, when I say Morgan knows how to do matching, she taught herself how to use an iPad. I mean, she closes out of it. She goes in. I've never taught Morgan how to use an iPad. I've
Mm-hmm.
never taught her. She can go on an iPad. She can close out an app. She can go into this. She does all types of matching games. And what I did to nurture that, again, she taught me what she could do. I'm another Dave in a sense too. I pushed her and I was like, oh, you can match. Oh, well, let's get every matching game we could. I put all the matching games on there. And she did well on those matching games. So it was apps on there that you had to pay for. You had to pay for the extended version of it. I did it because, again, for me, if that was something that she enjoyed, if that was her strength, I wanted to nurture her.
Yeah.
I wanted it to be where she even wowed herself sometimes when I got the extended version. She was so used to doing like the basic. So what I would do is sit there and I would kind of guide her hand to show her how she could do the higher versions of it. And
Yeah.
she did well with it. And one thing that she loved to do, she loved to feel as though she could do it, and she loved to see the audience. She loved Morgan. One thing Morgan loves to do is show you that she can do it. She loves to prove to you that I'm smart. It's like she
That's
has something to
awesome.
prove. Yes, she has something to prove. So if you say, well, Morgan, do you know how to do this? And she'll sit there and watch to see if you're watching. And what she would do is she does it. And at the end, she holds her hand up for kudos. So
Oh,
yeah, one thing I love is that she loves to be praised. And one thing that her school did alert me to, they said she's very keen on doing things right. She wants to do the right thing. She wants you to praise her. She wants to show you that she's capable of doing these things. And I started paying attention to that. So when we're in the kitchen, she loves to pull up her chair. She loves to come in the kitchen and watch me cook. She loves
mm-hmm.
to help stir, even though I'll be a little nervous because she likes to come to the stove and she likes to watch you cook. So she's at the place now where she's transitioning into the adult services. So, with that being said, they're trying her at the school, they're trying her with the different things to find out what is her niche. And that way she can kind of go and kind of build on that. So, those are some of the things that I didn't know with the transition services once in Maryland, once your child is, I want to say 18 or 19, they start kind of doing them in a rotational to see what their skill set is, and that way that they can kind of encourage them to go into that field. So that's another thing Morgan is good with.
I think that's awesome. I think
Yeah.
it's important that, we recognize even the smallest detail
Mhm.
of what our children are interested in, what they can do, because we're trying to look further down the road for
Yeah.
them and see what is available in life that will help them have what I always said, a fulfilled life. And a
Yes.
fulfilled life may look different from what I think it should look like. It's what it would look like for them. And, helping them to whether it's to stay social, stay active in the community, participate in community events, whatever it looks like, just keep it going for them. So I think those are some of the things that help drive me in trying to point out what it is that I could see my kid doing, learning their capabilities and, drawing on them. I will say with my oldest daughter, she's in a program for young adults. And, honestly, she is very subtle about it, but she's a leader. She knows what to do. She knows how to get people in line. I mean, she's kind of like Sergeant at Arms at home.
But even in the house, yep,
Yeah.
you see, yeah, it's comes about in the house. It probably starts with your house, her being the oldest and being the leader.
It probably do. I was sharing with my husband how on social media it was like that oldest girl. Everybody in the house, if you have children, that oldest girl had to take that mom role, and they was like they're most likely to not have children, or they've been bossing the kids around forever. And everybody was like, "Yeah, that's my oldest sister." And I looked and I thought, well, I didn't need y'all to boss around. She just took over anyway. And I just be finding myself advocating for the kids like, well, they gonna do it, Jai. You don't have to be so harsh, or something like, why am I taking up for my own kid with my daughter? She's that much in charge as far as like, do this, handle this. You're not supposed to be doing that. Why are you not in the bed?
I
She
love
is
that, Crystal.
she's a
I
rule
love that.
follower. She's a
Yeah.
rule follower, but sometimes I was just sharing with her, like, I always tell her, sprinkle a little sugar on it. Like, just be a little sweeter, just have a little bit more grace, And Roman is her soft spot, so she's coming like with guns loaded. What? Why are you in his room? Why are you talking to him? Get out. Like, we're like, wow, Ja, like, take it easy a little bit. Roman was wrong. It's hard for her to see that. But, she is, and that's a strength of hers. It's also good with needing her to, she's helpful in her young adult program. She's helpful to other new students or students that's learning to get around in the community. Jael keeps a spreadsheet of like how she spends her money. They were sharing it with me a week or two ago about how she spends her money. And I thought, that's awesome. Because I know she's particular, but now she's learning a different, not a rule, but a different way. Like back in the day, my dad still do it. He still balances checkbook. You're muted, Paula.
I said my mom too. That's that old school way with
That's
the
that old school.
registry and all of that. Yeah.
And people just budget differently. And I just see her budgeting like she's keeping a spreadsheet. Now she's doing something my other children do not do, but she's keeping a spreadsheet of the groceries she buys, how much she spends on her personal items. And I think that that's really, really smart. And it's leading to her goal, which she shared with me, is to live independently. And I support that decision. And so that's my job, is to help her get there so that she can. And this is the only way I can help her get there, is acknowledging all the things that she's really good at and building on those. And if there's areas where I think that it needs a lot more support, I work on those too. And sometimes those areas could be like, what do you call it? Like, probably like her personal care, like her just taking care of herself. Like, she's really good at washing her clothes and things like that, but she's not good at putting them up, So it's just like that, like, hey, Ja.
Things like that.
Yeah, just like, are you going to put those up? And then sometimes I open her closet and I'm like, well, where are all those clothes you washed? And she just like found other areas to put them. And I'm like, no, let's hang them up so we can see them, fold them up. So I would say stuff like that. Those are a bit more challenging for her. I think she's routine, like, I got it done. I did this, I did that. But to live independently, I want her to be able to know where her stuff is, hang it up, and I have to be open to know that it's not going to look like how I have to. Yes, I have to make it look like how she would like it to be,
But that's a great point, Crystal, when you talk about the nurturing. I know we talk about how we nurtured them when they were younger and everything, but you're crossing over into a whole different category of nurturing an adult. Because I know we've talked about Ja and how she wants to be independent and move out. How does that look at, knowing that that's your baby, knowing that we're the protectors, because nurturing, and I will say, I tell hubby this all the time, Jeremy does not live at home. And it's hard for me to envision him being on his own, but at one time or another, we knew this day would come. But when
Yeah.
we're talking about our special needs community, sometimes it's even harder for us to cross that bridge and nurture them and support them with moving out. Tell us a little bit about that, Crystal. I ain't interviewing you, but I just because when
I'm
we
in a
talk
hot
about,
seat.
yeah, when we talk about that, I
You
mean,
do.
that's hard. And I say that because someone had asked me about Morgan moving out. Me personally, Morgan has cognitive disability. She's nonverbal. So I don't see Morgan. I'm gonna take her choice away on that one. I don't know if she would ever want to move out, but I don't personally feel as though she can. But in Jai's case, I do understand Jai is able to speak up for herself. She's able to catch the bus. Like you said, she's able to manage her finances. She's a leader, but still from a mother standpoint, as far as nurturing her in adulthood, that's still something that is very hard to let go of.
It is. It's hard to let go of, even concerning like you said, our neurotypical children. So just motherhood in general is you're raising your children to get to a certain point and they reach it and you're like, hold up, how did we get here? It's beautiful. It's like you did your job, but on the other side, it still can look scary no matter what challenges or nothing that they're doing. It just doesn't matter. With Jael, I think one of the things that has helped me is when I'm raising my children, I started thinking of like what kind of children I want to raise. So this is before I'm coming up with I'm being exposed to, I have children that have challenges. It's just in my head what kind of children I want to raise. So I knew I wanted to raise respectful children. I wanted to raise children that would be good citizens, children, you get that in your head. What kind of children you want to raise? And then as you're raising them and you see certain challenges there, I still have that in the back of my mind, what is still falling in those lines. And so when I think of Jael, I feel like I raised her. I taught her to be respectful. I, taught her certain things, and I hope that she pulled from those strengths and that she really doesn't see sometimes the anxieties that I have in me about her moving on in life, But then I also, on the flip side, always tell my children, we're not going to be here always. So I need y'all to learn how to do, now. I may not always
Be
be
independent.
Here. Yes.
Ultimate goal, even for Morgan, with Morgan's multiple disabilities, the whole goal, and I don't know how most people see them, but ultimately we're trying to make them as independent as possible.
Yes, and that looks different for everyone.
It
And I
does.
love that Denise. Hey Denise, I missed you. But I love that you were saying like you agree with Paula, and I understand it looks different for every individual and what they're dealing with. But at some point, you still want them to have some independence in the sense of like, can they bathe by themselves? They may or may not be able to, but if they can, and you still bathe them, then you're not letting them thrive in an area that they could actually take care of themselves. It start off with small tasks. It's like, if you can't bathe yourself, can you lotion yourself? Like, I'm just going to give you the smallest detail. Can you put your deodorant on? So it starts to me in baby steps like that. And then you just keep building upon, and that's how they start doing. Then they take pride in, I did everything I was supposed to do, and I'm thinking of my youngest son in that sense. Like, he always wants to make sure, he is adamant about deodorant. It's like, hey, I don't have deodorant, and I could tell because he'll come use mine. It was an important skill, not a skill, but it was important for him when he started coming home, and we was like, ooh, it's that time for him. He needs deodorant. And then we start putting it on him, and he was like, well, what is this for? And we was like, woo, I think David told him, because boy, you smell like a hot dog, you make me want to bite you. And he was like, I don't want to smell like a hot dog. So then he always now be like, I want to put on deodorant. I need deodorant because I don't want to smell like no hot dogs. I was like, Lord, now that's stuck in his head. But it's important. Then we built on that. Then we built on lotion. And I know some people like, oh my gosh, like lotion. But my thing is, I have neurotypical kids who act like they were allergic to lotion. You know, they walked around with ashy, dry skin. And it's like, so you don't want to put no lotion on? You just want cracked skin? You know, so I took pride in putting that in Roman to like, take care of your skin. Your skin needs to be moisturized. And then it was, well, do this. But now you can. He sure did want to smell like hot dogs. Thank you, Dave, for tuning in. He did not want to smell like hot dogs. That was a good one, Paula. I can't hear you.
I'm sorry, guys. Hubby is not here, so you're going to hear Morgan in the background. So I've been trying to mute it so you all don't hear. But this is real life. When hubby's not here, he ain't man in the fort. Morgan wants my total attention, and that is something that I have to work on her with. Morgan wants my total attention all day long. She wants to sit. She wants to hold my hand. I don't know if that's a strength or a weakness, because even when it's time for her to go to school, it's like pushing her out the door. She has social anxiety and separation anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
So those are some of the things that I work on with Morgan. That is a deficiency. Morgan socially, when she was younger, she was nothing like that. She used to play in the midst of her cousins, everybody. We could go places. One day, we went to a restaurant and I started seeing certain things that she would do in a restaurant. She would cry, she would crawl up under the table. And again, this is my first experience with a special needs individuals. I didn't know what was going on. So these are some of the things that I work on with her. Me and hubby make sure we take her out. Now, at that time, Jeremy was in high school. Jeremy was in junior high. Started when he was in junior high. But as we continue to, and she continued to get older, we would go to church. She would act up in church. She wouldn't want to go in church. It was just everywhere. No one gave me a book. I didn't know what was going on. And I'm just telling these parents that's just.
And you said how old was she?
I want to say Morgan was like 8 or 9.
8 or 9.
Yeah. And so it just came out of nowhere. I just want you to know that if you're dealing with these special needs individuals, today they can be one way, and tomorrow the script will flip, and they will bring in whole different behaviors, personalities. It's just like you never knew your child. And Morgan just flipped out one day, guys. I didn't know what was going on. I took her to all different specialists, and they had to tell me she does not want to be around people. So this was a weakness. As we know, this is not realistic. So what it was doing was keeping me and Jeremy bound at the time. We couldn't go anywhere. We couldn't do anything. This was something that I had to say, we can't live like this. If I didn't say that, and then I didn't have someone to tell me about this, I wouldn't have known what to do. What we did was continue to take her to these same restaurants. We continue to take her to church. It's almost like desensitizing her. It's like if she had it her way, we wouldn't have gone anywhere. And one day we went to a restaurant, and this is when I made the decision that she won't run me. We went to a restaurant and she acted up so bad. I was so embarrassed. And I'm telling you, it's something that sometimes you think, oh, I wouldn't be embarrassed. I was so embarrassed. I thought the only remedy was to get up and leave. And that's what I did. I let Jeremy stay because I never wanted it to be where Jeremy had to refrain from participating in things or doing things because of Morgan. I just didn't ever want that. So I left. And when I put her in her seatbelt in the car and I looked around, she was smiling. And I said, I didn't know what was going on, guys, but I was like, you will never get the best of me like that. And after that day, I said, I don't care what she does. I have to put off the embarrassment. I didn't care who looked at me. I didn't care what she did. I was like, we're not leaving. So along with her strengths came weaknesses. And some of these weaknesses you have to continue to nurture them, even in those weaknesses. You have to nurture them. You have to encourage them just like you would anybody else. So I say that to say, um, as your child is growing up, and when you have the little teenager and they go from, the teenager, they doing puberty and all of that, so does our special needs individuals. And
Yeah,
you
I
have
was about
to
to
ride that
say.
wave.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was about to say, are they weaknesses or are they like challenges?
It's
Because a
challenges.
lot of times there
Yeah.
are things that, they're still an individual. They're
Yeah.
still going through changes in their bodies that, they don't know how to handle. And, like maybe our neurotypical children can say or express it. And sometimes our
Mhm.
neurotypical children aren't able to express fully what they're dealing with. I had a kid that was dealing with a lot. I could tell they were angry about what I don't know. But when I
Mhm.
asked them, "Are you angry?" they were like, "Yes." I said, "I need you to actually say that. Just
Mhm.
let it out. So then we can move forward with that." Because, holding it in and huffing and puffing, walking around my house like I thought, I'm not going to walk around on eggshells, not try to, you a ticking bomb, and I'm trying not to
Mhm.
like do the wrong thing and cause you to blow up, but I prefer you express it and let it out. And so sometimes with individuals that are dealing with different challenges in their bodies, we just really don't know what they're dealing with. And it just shows up in their behaviors.
Yeah, it does.
Those behaviors are, we talk about this, they're forms of communication.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it changes, and their bodies are changing. Um, and we just don't know what to do, and we're
Mhm.
doing the best we can, and we're trying
Exactly.
to have that patience. We're trying to exhibit some grace,
Oh my goodness.
we're trying to use the tools that we have, and sometimes just being realistic. Paula, I know you will agree, that's just not even enough
It's
sometimes.
not. And
Yeah.
just like we talked about before we got on, and I just try to be as real as possible
Yeah.
because some things I was always afraid to talk about or just afraid to admit to myself, let alone others, is that I was embarrassed of her behavior at times because I felt like I didn't have control. And I always felt like with Jeremy, I had control. Like I say, Jeremy, go sit down, and Jeremy sit down.
Mm.
Morgan was the type that just did not do it. And so for me, I felt as though I did not have control. I felt like I was afraid to take her places because I did not know how she was gonna act. And it took a lot out of me. I'm not gonna lie. It was
Yeah.
like it was just tiring. And I know me and Crystal talked about, our life this week before we got on. And it's like life is life, and it doesn't sit and wait for you to say, okay, I'm ready to deal with this. I work for the federal government. We're going through all types of things, not just the federal government is that this new administration is posing a problem for, but the world as a whole.
Yeah.
So it's like there are times, and we had the mental what was her name, Candace, last week.
Oh,
And we,
yes.
yes, oh my gosh, that was so excellent. But you have to sometimes just step back and say, I can't deal with this week. But sometimes, even in saying that, what can you do? Because hubby's away. Like you said, Crystal, Dave's away. What do you do?
You
What do you
keep
do?
going,
Yeah.
we have to. But when
Yeah.
you said, like, when you, and I hear from a lot of families who really don't like go out to eat or go to public events and um be in public spaces, let alone a house of worship, is
Hmm.
that, they don't, you say you just felt like you didn't have that control, especially like how you probably could shoot Jeremy and he knew how to get it together,
Exactly.
and you didn't have that with Morgan. I also would like to say probably the support was missing,
It was.
because I think that if you had that support when you are out to dinner or in a public space, you don't feel alone, and you don't feel
Exactly.
like you're battling this by yourself. You're having someone like right there with you, you know, and you're able to handle the situation a little bit more better. You don't feel all those pressures of like,
Mm-hmm.
what if this goes wrong? What if I have to just scoop her up and leave? What if I can't scoop her up because, you know, Morgan is thin and tiny, but that girl is like, that day I tried to pick her up, I was like, you know what? I need my back. You know, like
Exactly.
Morgan is like,
She's
wait.
a ton of bricks. And
Yes.
hubby just joined in, and I always give my baby his props. He was the missing link to our family because even when I'm in church and I got on my heels, he's like, baby, go ahead, I got her. So I think you're
That
absolutely
support, you saw the
that
difference
man, when I
with
tell
and
you that is
without
a
it.
big difference going somewhere. And one thing I did not ever want to do is put that responsibility on Jeremy. Now I do see how having Morgan there, having Jeremy in that setting, how it's produced this strong young black man today. But as he was younger, I just didn't feel as though I wanted him to be responsible for being that help that I needed. I wanted
Mhm.
him to be a child too. But it did, I look at that today and it did help Jeremy to be the young man that he is today. It does.
Oh, absolutely. It makes
Yeah.
our children have a more tender and compassionate heart. You know,
Yeah.
we've had our children on before and they spoke of it. And, you know, my daughter who's away in college was just sharing with me how she has interest in an organization. And they were like, well, why should we pick you?
Oh
And
my
she
goodness.
said she was letting them know because if you would allow, I would like to bring a different perspective.
Oh
Why
my
can't
goodness.
we include and reach out to people in the community with disabilities?
Yeah.
I said, come on, you know, like she sees the world a little bit different
Totally
than
different. Yeah.
the you know, and so I think that it is important for our children to have that lens on of how they
Hmm.
see the world and how they see people and how they show up. You know,
Hmm.
I'll always go back to some of the past guests we had, and especially Mike Powell at
Yeah.
AudApp. You know,
Yeah.
I love how he just always shared his experience, even how he looked at people in the workplace. Well, that's how
Hmm.
I want my children to look at people as they move forward in life instead of like, that person crazy, something wrong with them.
Hmm.
Maybe have those antennas going off like something is a little off. I could be a little
Hmm.
bit more sensitive and listen to them, be
Hmm.
mindful of them. You know what I mean? Like just have
Exactly.
more compassion, more patience. And I
Hmm.
think that that's needed. And that to me helps nurture those strengths
Hmm.
in our children, even in our neurotypical children, you know, to
Hmm.
see that these are everyday challenges for people. And
Exactly.
all it takes is people just want to be seen just like you.
Hmm.
They don't want to be, you know, people just what do we call it? We was like, you know, they don't want to make it seem like they're a case. You always got to
Yeah.
help them. They don't want
Yeah.
that.
They don't
They
want the
want to
help. Yeah. They don't want
they
to be viewed like that. Yeah.
no, they want to be treated just like everyone else with respect
That's
as
right.
that they're a human, and they just want to move forward in life. And I think that that's important. So when you talk about, you know, my boy Jeremy, you know, and I know you didn't want to put that on him, but he had a front seat to
Yeah.
seeing how his mom cared for his sister and how he
Hmm.
was support in the best way that he could be, because it's only so much an
Yeah.
8-year-old can do and a 9-year-old, you know, but the fact that he had a mind to want to do that,
Hmm.
you know, I
Hmm.
think that's commendable.
And I
That's
will say,
commendable.
even with Denise and in the comments, like Denise was saying, how sometimes they're not able to vocalize how they
Now,
feel. And I think that's the hardest part because there was sometimes that I was like, we just assume Morgan, like when she cries and she's not in a good mood, we just assume that she ain't wake up with a headache. We just assume that her stomach ain't aching. We just assume that she got the perfect day. And I had to tell myself one day, like, she could have a bad day, allow her to have a bad day. I think it's different when they can vocalize it. Sometimes you have to dig a little deeper and for me, I was like, okay, I gotta put on that little softer side for her. Sometimes I'm just rubbing her back when she cries. I'll rub her back and I'll like kiss her tears, and then she'll look up and smile at me. And I think sometimes she just wants to be heard, even when she's not being able to vocalize it. It's like she
Yes.
wants to be heard and understood. And I think that's so important. And even Dave was like, the strengths you exhibit can and will encourage others to do the same. And again, this is why Advocacy is here. Advocacy is here to encourage, to enlighten, and we're just being as transparent as possible, because for those that may not have crossed that bridge, or those that are right there right now, it's like, understand you're not alone.
No,
You
you're
may
not.
think you, because I know for myself, I've always felt like nobody else had a Morgan. Nobody else understood. It seemed like wherever I went, their child may not have been able to talk the first couple of years, but then they were able to talk and they were progressing. And then this person's, I just always felt alone. But I was like, I know God doesn't make any mistakes, but
Yes.
during that time, you're not thinking about that. You're like, well, why can't she talk? Why can't she talk? And one day I just realized that talking wasn't the biggest thing that I wanted her to do. I was like, you understand her? You understand what she needs and wants. So she is communicating with
It's
you.
communicating. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, again, it's like taking and appreciating each stage of her life. Just like when Jeremy was young, I would think of, Dad, when they get this age, I'll be this age. I started learning to appreciate them in every stage of their life. I
Yes.
did. Yeah. And I will say, from the nurturing standpoint, not only did I nurture her, one of the things that we talk about with the siblings begin to nurture them. And I know Jeremy would nurture her. There were times that she was crying and I couldn't even console her. I would come in Jeremy's room and he'd be having her laying in the bed with him and he's just rubbing her back and she's just laying on him. And that was what she needed for the time. So I just thank him for being a nurturer, because sometimes it relieved me, but it gave her what she needed. And it taught her that I'm not the only one that can, give you peace. Your brother can. And that was really helpful.
Absolutely.
That
And,
was
and
helpful.
I can see that. And I can
Mhm.
see that even in my home. Um, I see that. I said earlier how Jael is just really tenderhearted for
Mhm.
Roman.
Mhm.
And I can see why. Just like what you just said, Roman is always in Jael's bed
Mhm.
and she allows it. But then there are times that she says, Mom, I told him no. And so I just have to step in and say, she needs privacy tonight. She needs some space,
Yeah.
but
Mhm.
she allows it. And I think it does her heart good to know like he needs her
I know. I
and he
love that.
listens to her.
Mhm.
She don't bully him. She bullied Daniel. She don't bully him, but she is still sharp. Like Roman, get in his bathroom, take a bath, put your clothes on, get in your like. She's just direct. I'll say that she's direct in how she is, but he holds a tender spot with her, and I allow that to happen because I see it working both ways. It's
Mm.
working for Roman and it's also working for Jael. And that's something that I don't know if I'm no longer here, they are going to need each other. And
Mm.
sometimes, when siblings know that someone's counting on them, I think that helps them rise to the occasion a
It
little bit
does.
more and
Mhm.
step up. And so I think that I could see her stepping up in any area that I'm like, hey, let's tighten it up a little here. I know you can do it. I could see her stepping up to that, you know.
Crystal, I think about when it's time for her to move out. That's going to be a transition for the whole family.
Okay, well, we're not thinking about that anytime soon,
I know, but
but
just to even think about, and I again, I can understand, because even when Jeremy was like, Mom, I'm getting ready to move on, I'm like, won't you wait for like 6 months? Won't you wait for like a year? Just do. No, it's time, Mom. But I do see the
mhm,
importance of him moving out and growing up, because like you say,
yeah,
that's what we raised them for. We
yeah.
we did. We didn't raise them to sleep. Can I have a basement till I'm 50 years old? We didn't raise them for that,
Right.
and there's a lot
Right.
of households that are like that. That's not what we've raised them to be. We've raised them for greatness. So why should Jael and Morgan be any different?
Any different, absolutely. And their greatness may look different. I always
Yeah.
say that her living independent isn't always separated from us or family.
Mm,
It's just her being able to hold her own in any household. So we
mm,
always presented it like, Nashawn, if something should happen to us, we're expecting you to really come through for your siblings to make sure they're well taken care of. And so, if by chance your sister has nowhere to be,
mhm,
she should be with you. And
mm,
if she's with you, we hope that we've done our part, that she's not a burden on you,
I like
financially
that.
and things like that. So she should be able to live an independent life living in your home,
I like.
having her space, taking care of her business, keeping her space clean. If she has a job, going to her job, able to get there on her own, able to come back. Like she could live a full life. That's how I view independence. Living a full life, like I said when we started off, a life of fulfillment. She
Mm-hmm.
should have still fulfillment in her life that doesn't really require her, can you take me? I
To
can't go
to fully
until
be
he can
dependent
take me.
upon
Yes.
others. Yeah,
Yes. I
yeah,
don't want her living her life of it's contingent on if someone can get her where she needs to be or
I like
not.
that.
So, even though she does know our local transit, where I'm located, the bus system doesn't quite come all the way where I am. And so, I mean, people use ride share. Why can't she? She absolutely.
Mhm.
I love. We had past guests on. I can Talon. And it's
Yes,
like Talon
Talon,
was
yeah.
getting on like absolutely. She should be able to. So my concern was if she's in an Uber or a Lyft, how can she communicate if she wanted to say something to the driver,
Mhm,
and the driver doesn't understand her? And
mhm,
so we make sure that she has the technology she needs, that if she texts something in her phone, it should be able to speak and she can
mm,
communicate. And that's why I need to equip her with all the tools necessary for her to live a fulfilled life of
mhm.
independence, being able to take it. I don't ever want her to say, well, nobody can take me. No, everybody got an Uber app. You can get an Uber too, you too. You know what I mean? I want her to know
Mhm, mhm,
you can do that too, especially if she's comfortable in her community.
mhm.
And she knows where she's going. So if she saw something a little off, and Jai quick to share her location. So
I love it. I know one thing that I did early on, and I would caution anybody is when Morgan started feeding herself, she had like the occupational therapist come into the house and she was feeding herself. Of course, being a single mom, and I'm coming home in the evening giving instructions. I'm like, Jeremy, when you get in the house, I need you to do this, blah, blah, blah. I found it easier and a lot cleaner to feed Morgan. But what I would say is that was something that I learned the hard way. I would not encourage people to do that. I'd rather her um make a mess on the floor because we had a little table in the kitchen. And Morgan, I would put her plate down there at times and she would feed herself. She would make a mess. But guess what? It freed up my time to sit down and eat because a
yes.
lot of the times I was eating and feeding her. And again, when you think that you're doing things to lessen the responsibility on you, sometimes you're increasing the responsibility on you. So what I would say is to make her as independent as possible. Another thing that I didn't do, and I didn't even know Morgan could do this. I just start really expanding, trying to see about her understanding. When it was
Mm-hmm.
bath time, I was going there, getting her, take her clothes off and this and that. One day I said, Morgan, take those clothes off. When I came back, her clothes were fully off.
Mm-hmm.
I was so surprised because again, if I say more, I try not to give her compound commands, because at one time it
Hmm.
was like just give her one command. So I was like, Morgan, clothes off. She would take them off, and then I would say, now I say, Morgan, take your clothes off and put them in a dirty hamper. When I say she does it, so I stopped trying to, I just kept adding on
Oh, I
things like,
love it. I think
yeah,
that's the
so
right way to do it. I think
exactly.
that's
Get your
really
put your
good.
dishes in the sink. Get your because sometimes she would just take off her stuff and me and her godmother laugh because she's famous for thinking we're her slaves. She finished drinking the juice and she just throws the cup. I'm like, oh no, no, no. I will grab her hand and I go over there and I said, pick it up and put it in the sink. Sometimes she couldn't distinguish between the sink and the trash. So a couple of times we lost a couple of bottles, but what I kept doing is I was like, no, 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 here is the sink. And what she
Hmm.
would do is once she put her stuff in the sink, she'll look at me with a high five and a smile. So I would just say, make sure that you have like a reward system for them. Be careful about chastising them when they don't get it right. Have some
Right.
patience. Yeah,
Right.
patience. Make sure that you have that, like that reward system. Like some people say gummy bears, like give them something that they like. But Morgan likes kudos. If you don't give her kudos, she'll put your hand up, like, give me my kudos.
Like, honey, you forgot. It's a
Uh-huh.
high five moment.
But that's a motivating factor for her. It motivates her to want to do the right thing. It does.
I love that. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
important. And,
Mm-hmm.
I will say, and I think you will agree, and a lot of parents, just always letting go those reins,
Yeah,
letting go, loosening that control, that string,
it
and
is.
seeing what they're capable of doing. Like when you hold your kids' hands, and at some point they don't want to hold our hand. They
Yes.
like, let free me. I want
Yes.
to cross
Yes.
this street, or I do not want people seeing us holding hands.
Yes.
And it hurts. We're like, no, because for safety reasons, we need to hold hands.
Mm-hmm.
But when we let them loose and we see that they're able to do it, then we say, we breathe, a sigh of relief, like they can actually do it. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's no different in a lot of areas of our children's lives. It's just letting them, building on those strengths one at a time,
Mm-hmm.
and stretching them in their
Mm-hmm.
capabilities of what they're able to do. And then also being able to identify, like, this area could use a little bit more extra time,
Mm-hmm.
and it could use some extra patience
Mm-hmm.
so that they can get it. And then there may be some things that they're just not going to get. I will say
Mm-hmm.
in our household, everyone has chores, and I get tickled because we did not give Jael like to sweep. Just thinking of her coordination
Mm-hmm.
and what it entails to sweep, hold the broom and sweep. So she ended up getting like dishes, like. And so a caregiver who would come and stand in when David and I would travel was like, one time she was here and she was like, Jael, girl, get that broom and sweep. And she said all the kids jumped in, Jael don't sweep, Jael don't sweep. And she was like, don't tell me what she can't do. I know what she can do. Get that broom and sweep. And girl, I was like, and she came, when David and I came home, she was like, I just want y'all to know Jael swept. She swept that floor. And it's not that I didn't think she can. It's just that I tried to give her something that I knew she could be consistent with. And honestly, there are some things I come behind her and do. But if I want my floor swept, I was like, I just really don't want to come behind. I wanted the kid who could do that. So that
Mm-hmm.
was their job. But I believed her. I believed her. I was like, okay. She was like, yeah, I don't know why them kids, they all jumped in. I told them, hush up. She got that breast, but I love that
I
about
like
her.
that.
She
I
was
like that.
always like, "Don't tell me what these kids can't do. I know what these kids." And she spent a lot of time with my kids, so she absolutely she understands and knows. So I'm with you, Paula. That's important.
Her aunt Joyce Cox is famous. Yeah, she is. I had to put this up here because she is so right. When Morgan giggles and laughs, oh my goodness, she does express herself really well through her facial expressions and her smile. It's very touching. When she is happy, and me and my Jeremy used to be like, don't start giggling like no hyena. We
Oh
were
my
famous for
gosh.
Jeremy would be like that all the time because Morgan gets into a giggle spot and we all silly. And I was like, that's one thing she definitely got from us is that giggle mode. She
Oh,
starts giggling. And when I say she does have the cutest smile and the cutest giggle. And one person that Morgan, when you talked about the person staying at your house, one person that Morgan does not play with is her godmother, Aunt Cookie. Aunt Cookie can do things that I can't do. She's
it be
like,
like that.
yeah, oh, she can't. I say, no, she won't wear her hat. Oh, yes, she did. I told her, I wish you would go out of here without that hat on. Put that hat on. And she struggles to put it on. She said, do not take that hat off. When I tell you, her Aunt Cookie can get her to do things that I couldn't even get her to do. I said, well, Lord, sometimes when she left, if she didn't do so, I said, I'm going to call your Aunt Cookie. I was like, because she can get her to do things that I can't even
But
get her to
isn't that
do.
something, Paula, how other people can get our kids to show up
Yeah,
in a way that maybe we can't?
yeah,
And so that's another way to look at, like, we really can't say what they can or can't do.
yeah,
Sometimes our kids show up better at school.
yes.
They show up better in a classroom. They show up
Mhm.
better at on a job
Yeah,
site. You know,
yeah,
you be like, you don't even clean a dish at home, but they cleaning all the dishes at the job. They show up, they meet expectations, and it lets you know this kid, this person, they really
they're
they can do
capable
it.
of way
They
more
are
than what
very
we
well
yeah.
capable. Absolutely.
Yes, and when I just tell you this is something I feel is so near and dear to my heart because there are a lot of people that come and say, "Does Morgan go to school? Does Morgan do this? Does what?" I'm like, y'all don't know. Morgan lives a full life. And I will say, even with hubby, when he came on in, he got a full view of who Morgan was. And
Hmm.
now he gets to see her in her fullness. So I think just, one thing that just working with her on is being comfortable in uncomfortable, unfamiliar settings. That's something
Yes.
that we it's truly been a struggle for her for some time, but I will say now it's gotten so much easier going out to dinner. And you're right, Crystal, a lot of it comes from hubby comes in, he's like, babe, go get the table. He brings Morgan in, and having that support, having that
Having that
help there,
support.
it
Yeah.
makes a difference. It really does make a difference. And I will say, before he came along, my brother-in-law Sean, I've mentioned him before, Sean Curry has been such a help with her because Morgan is very she like most kids, she deals with men differently. Um
Hmm.
yeah, my brother-in-law was the more of the authoritative one. He wasn't the one that sat there and patted her up and but his authority, she recognized his authority
The
and
tone in
she
his voice.
oh yes, and his height. His
Ooh.
height. She definitely respected that. So I will say, one I just wanted this we this is one of the topics that we wanted to talk about. And I know we talk about it in we do dip on it and talk about it in a lot of our shows because one thing we do want to stress is that our kids are intelligent, our kids are
Absolutely.
capable, and we never want to deny them the ability to show us what they can do and who they are. So I think what I would say in closing as a parent is for those that's just starting out this journey, don't be dismayed by a lot of the medical descriptions of what your child can and cannot do. Let your child show you what they are capable of. And then it
Yes.
also comes in you nurturing them. It comes in you supporting them. It comes in you getting them the things that they need. If they need occupational therapy, a lot of the times get them those things early. Those things that they can do, let them be as independent as possible. You will honestly thank us later, because it
Absolutely.
frees up your time. It frees up you being able to spend some time for yourself. And as Candace said, yes, last Thursday, it's so important for us to get our time. So you need that balance. So
Yeah.
with them being more independent, it gives you the opportunity to step back and spend some more time with yourself. So those are my closing remarks. Crystal, I will let you go ahead and tell us yours.
I will say, one of the things that would be helpful to a family, a caregiver started on this journey, and you know, probably hit with a lot of they can't do this, or why, my kid's not on level with other kids, or for their age, and to not compare,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
and let them have their own opportunity of growth. And if once you do that, I think you'll recognize that your kid might have strengths that other kids, their
Yeah.
peers, may not have. And those are beautiful things. And those are things that I learned early on not to rob me of, is not what my kid couldn't do, but what they could do. And I had patience with what they couldn't do. There's some things that you really want your kid to do, like potty train. You really want that for your kid. And as your kid is getting older, I think it sets in with you like, this need to happen. But patience.
Yeah.
Patience will help you get through that. And once you conquer that, if you're able to, with their abilities, it feels really good for you and the individual. So just moving forward, just have some grace for yourself so that you can really show up strong for the person that you're caring for. So I really enjoyed talking about this tonight. It's been really, really, really interesting, and I hope it's been helpful.
Yes, thank you so much. And then sometimes I'm with you, Crystal. Time flew past because sometimes you just don't realize how far your kids have come until you talk about it and
Yeah.
just share information. So yes, we hope this session was helpful to everybody, because it was definitely something that reminds me of what Morgan can, how far she's come. And sometimes we
Yeah.
need to remind ourselves of that. So we hope to see you next Thursday. We appreciate you joining us, and we are so happy to have um Crystal with us and our listeners. Thanks, Dave,
Yes.
too. Even though
Thank
Dave's
you.
on travel and hubby's on travel, they joined in. So thanks to our husbands too.
Yes. Thank you. Have a good one.
All right, bye.